This video will review the types of inspections that could be performed during the due diligence period. What other inspections and services should I consider? Wood-destroying insects usually include termites, powder post beetles, and carpenter bees. A licensed pest control operator can determine whether there is evidence of a present or past infestation and whether the property has been previously treated for an infestation. A current infestation will likely require treatment by a pest control company. If a wood-destroying insect infestation has been present or was present for a long period of time, there could be structural damage to the home which could warrant a structural inspection by an engineer or licensed general contractor, as well as structural repairs. The pest control operator will issue a written inspection report for you to sign acknowledging your receipt of it. A survey is the process of locating and measuring a property's boundary lines to determine its borders, its total area or acreage, the location of buildings and other improvements to the property, and any encroachments, easements, and setback violations. Some lenders require a survey. Buyers are typically responsible for the cost. If your lender will not require a survey, it is still wise to obtain one before the end of the due diligence period to make sure the acreage and borders of the property are accurate. This would allow you to resolve all encroachments, setback violations, or other issues prior to closing. The title insurance company may exclude from coverage any problem shown on the survey that is not resolved before closing. Virtually all lenders will require you to pay for an appraisal of the property to determine if its market value meets or exceeds the purchase price. Note, your loan amount will be based upon the lesser of appraised value and sales price. Review the appraisal report prior to the end of the due diligence period to make sure that the value of the property, its square footage, and features match what was advertised and what is shown in the purchase contract. If you intend to pay cash for a property, consider ordering an appraisal anyway or asking your broker to prepare a comparative market analysis or CMA to confirm that you are not paying too much for the property. If you are buying a property with a well and/or a septic system, not city water or sewer, have the well and/or septic system inspected prior to the end of the due diligence period. A well inspection and separate water quality test will determine whether there is an adequate amount of water and water pressure and if there are any harmful contaminants like bacteria, heavy metals, pesticides, etc. in the water. An examination of the septic system should determine if it is adequate to support the number of bedrooms in the property and is performing properly. Repairs to these systems can be very expensive. Be sure to review a copy of the septic permit to confirm that the number of bedrooms specified on the permit meets or exceeds the actual number of bedrooms in the house. If the property is advertised as having city water or city sewer, ask for a copy of the seller's most recent utility bill and call the city or the utility provider if the bill does not clearly indicate that the property has city water and/or sewer services. Radon is a colorless, odorless, radioactive, carcinogenic gas that can be found in the air and well water of homes all over the United States. Any home can have radon, regardless of its age, condition, or location. Have the property tested to make sure that radon is at or below the EPA's guidelines for an acceptable level. As a buyer, you should strongly consider hiring a licensed HVAC technician to determine whether the HVAC system is functioning properly whenever a home inspector recommends it. If the HVAC company determines there is a problem, the buyer should ask the seller to hire a licensed HVAC firm to make any necessary repairs prior to closing. It is recommended to have a re-inspection by your HVAC technician following any repairs to confirm the repairs were properly made. If the home inspector reports seeing structural defects such as foundation cracks, inadequate support in the crawl space or roof, moisture-related damage, or damage from a long-term wood-destroying insect infestation, a structural engineer can determine the severity of the problem and indicate whether repairs are needed. If there is excessive moisture and/or mold in the crawl space or other parts of the house, a crawl space specialist may be able to suggest a solution for the moisture in the crawl space. A mold inspector will be able to determine the type and extent of the mold and whether it is harmful to people. Properties located along or near bodies of water, waterways, and low-lying areas may be located in federally designated flood zones. If you are going to borrow money to buy property located in certain flood zones, the lender may require you to buy flood insurance. If you are not going to obtain a loan to buy the property, determining whether the property is located in a flood zone and the cost of flood insurance are still important considerations. Keep in mind that flood zone maps are updated periodically, so a property's location inside or outside a flood zone can change. You can search for the property address on FEMA.gov to view the most relevant flood map in the area. If the property is located in a flood zone, talk to your insurance agent about the cost of flood insurance. A private street or road is one that has not been accepted into the state system of roads and is not state-maintained. It may or may not have been constructed to the standards of the NC Department of Transportation. All responsibility for repairing, maintaining, and clearing a private road lies with the people who own land along the road. It is very important to have a road maintenance agreement signed by all such property owners that makes clear who has the responsibility and cost of maintaining, repairing, and clearing the road. Typically, all the owners. The condition of the road will deteriorate over time, and lenders will be less likely to lend money to buyers if the road is not properly maintained. This can make such properties more difficult to sell later. The developer of a new subdivision is required to give prospective buyers a subdivision street disclosure statement indicating whether the street on which the lot or house is located is public or private. North Carolina General Statute 136-102.6 F. If you are sensitive to noise, odors, or traffic, be sure to investigate the property's proximity to airports, highways, fire stations, businesses, farms, and other land uses that generate any of these. Searching public information, driving around the area, and talking to neighbors are ways to gather such information. Documents to review include the Residential Property and Owners Association Disclosure Statement. A seller must deliver this form to a buyer when the buyer makes an offer. The purpose of this form is to give a seller the opportunity to disclose any defects present in the home. As a buyer, you should carefully review this form. If the seller answered yes to any question or failed to answer any question, ask for an explanation. Note that sellers have the right to make no representation on the statement. Mineral and oil and gas rights mandatory disclosure statement. A seller must deliver this form when a buyer makes an offer. The purpose of the form is to give the seller an opportunity to disclose whether the mineral, oil, and/or gas rights have been severed from the property. If the seller answers yes to any question, ask for more information. Note that sellers have the right to make no representation as to some of the statements on the form. Restrictive covenants and homeowners association. Bylaws. Obtain and review all available restrictive covenants and homeowner association documents to verify that your intended use of the property will be permitted and that you understand other requirements and restrictions imposed in the neighborhood. These might include things like operating a business from the home, renting the home, paint colors, parking, or having animals. If a property is subject to a HOA, it is also a good idea to inquire about the HOA's financial situation and whether anticipated expenses could lead to an assessment.